Childhood in the Anderson mansion. Looking back now, my earliest memories are woven with a strange mix of privilege and longing. My name is Grace Anderson, and I grew up in a sprawling, white brick mansion nestled just outside Houston, Texas. One of those houses you see in glossy real estate magazines, framed by manicured gardens and a driveway lined with ancient oaks. If you peeked through our grand front windows, you'd see the chandeliers glimmering and the floors spotless, as if every moment of our lives was staged for a family portrait. Sometimes I felt like I was living in someone else's story, always smiling for a camera I couldn't see. From the outside, everyone saw the Anderson family as the epitome of old Texas money and Southern charm. My father, Richard Anderson, wore expensive suits and kept his voice calm behind closed doors. My memories of my mother are faint and tinged with the scent of her perfume, the softness of bedtime stories, whispered after long dinners. She passed away when I was just 8. That was when the house, once warm, started to grow cold and cavernous. Most days of my childhood were dictated by routine.
Come now,
Tutors
sweetie, give
came
him a big
and went.
smile.
Strict nannies enforced table manners
That's it.
and piano practice, and the help always seemed to disappear
Thank you for coming
when the
tonight.
family gathered.
I
Even
believe
as
this
a
agreement
kid,
will be
I
mutually
understood
beneficial.
how to pose
As
for
do I.
Christmas cards,
We are eager to
shake
begin.
hands with my father's business partners, and always maintain appearances. But beneath all the surface politeness, I remember the loneliness most. I was an only child for those first years. When the only people around me were adults discussing deals I didn't understand. My only company became the stray cat who slept by the kitchen door. I secretly envied the ordinary families in the neighborhood, the kids who could bike around freely, scrape their knees, make noise. My days were lived under antique ceilings and behind tall, locked gates. Sometimes, all I wanted was a messy bedroom, home-cooked meals, or the sound of a parent laughing. Instead, my world was filled with echoes in empty hallways and elaborate birthday parties, where I was the tiniest guest in my own home. The mansion gave me every physical comfort a child could want.
They're
Crystal
everywhere.
toys,
Come here, my
a
love.
private pool, vacations to the Bahamas.
Whee!
But none of it ever filled the spaces in me that ached for warmth. There were moments of pure happiness. Yes, like summer evenings, chasing fireflies with my mom before she got sick, or reading novels on the balcony while the city blinked in the sunset. But those moments were fleeting. After we lost her, the mansion turned into something else. A beautiful fortress, trapping all my silences inside. The dark side, behind closed doors. It's strange how a house so full of light can hide so many shadows. After my mother passed, the Anderson mansion was never the same. My father's distant, polished presence became even more silent. And into that hush stepped Amanda, my stepmother. At first, everyone thought she was the answer to our fractured family. She was beautiful, charming in that effortless way that made people instantly like her. Whenever we hosted parties, she'd glide through the rooms with a smile and a compliment, ready for every guest. But when the doors closed and the last car pulled away down the gravel drive, that mask would drop so fast. Sometimes I wondered if I'd imagined her sweetness in the first place. I was just a kid, but it didn't take long for me to understand my place in Amanda's new world order. It started as little things, my favorite art supplies thrown out without a word, or my old bedroom curtains replaced with something she liked better. Soon, it was more pointed. Comments about my hair being too wild, my hobbies being childish. She made sure I knew I could never measure up, always comparing me to her friends' kids or later to my new stepbrother, Ethan. Praise was rationed like the most expensive caviar. And it was never for me. Dinner time became a daily performance.
Did you hear that?
And I was always off script. If I
I
spoke
heard a
too
whisper.
much, I was told to be quiet and let the adults speak. If I was too quiet, she'd accuse me of being sullen and ungrateful. I learned quickly that no matter what I did, it wasn't going to be right. I'd watch my father withdraw further with every passing month, hiding himself behind work, while Amanda took on more control, establishing rules and routines that left me isolated or invisible. The grand hallways that once echoed with my laughter now seemed to swallow sound whole. Sometimes I'd hear Amanda whispering, with my father behind closed doors. Once, I caught words like discipline and respect, as if I were a wayward stranger, not a daughter still grieving my mother. I remember the sting of being told to grow up the year I turned 9 and asked for my mom's favorite chocolate cake on my birthday. Amanda served lemon tart instead. On the outside, we kept up appearances. I dressed in the clothes Amanda chose
I told
for
you
me,
this would happen if you
smiled
didn't listen to
dutifully
me.
in
I
family
am
photos,
listening, but you are
and
not
nodded
making
politely
any sense right
at
now.
her friends' questions about boarding schools and debutante balls. But inside, I felt myself shutting down, shrinking away from the girl I'd been when my mother was alive. The help in the house, those who remembered the old warmth, started to dwindle, replaced by staff loyal to Amanda or indifferent to my presence. Nights were the worst. The mansion, so lively during the day, turned into a maze of creaks and sighs after dark. Lying in my oversized bed, I'd listen for my father's footsteps, hoping maybe tonight he'd check in on me. He rarely did. Alone with the weight of so many unspoken words, I'd sometimes sneak out to the kitchen to find solace in the company of the stray cat, one of the few creatures in the house who simply accepted me, no questions asked. For years, I kept these secrets locked tight behind the Anderson mansion's doors. To the world, we were still perfect. But in the quiet corners, in the cold silences, I was learning what it felt like to be the outsider in my own home, and to wonder just how much more I could take before something inside me broke. Years of blame and isolation. If I could put a name to that next chapter of my life, I'd call it the age of blame and loneliness. Amanda and my father had a silent pact, one that made me the outsider, the scapegoat, the ever-present reminder of the family's flaws. As I got older, the lines between family and foe blurred. My new stepbrother, Ethan, once a timid boy glued to video games, slowly became Amanda's golden child. He could do no wrong. If Ethan forgot chores, I was scolded for not setting a good example. If he failed a math test, Amanda would lament that my bad influence had rubbed off on me. Every household mishap, missing keys, a stained tablecloth, a broken vase, found a way to land at my feet, regardless of where I'd been or what I'd done. The worst were the comparisons. Sometimes Amanda would line up my accomplishments, as if she were unfurling a balance sheet, and tell me how Ethan had more friends, better manners, a neater room. My father, when he did bother to notice, simply nodded in agreement, too quiet and soft to defend me, but too polite to say anything cruel directly. That, in some ways, hurt more. I would have preferred an angry outburst over that indifferent complicity. School never felt like a refuge. I'd walk the halls of my private academy in tailored uniforms, feeling simultaneously invisible
I told you this was
and
a mistake
exposed.
coming here tonight.
My classmates marveled at my home.
We can't leave
You
yet,
live in that
not when
mansion.
so much is at stake.
But the envy in their voices made me flinch. I carried secrets in my backpack. The silent treatments, the public humiliations, the way my stepmother's praise always stopped right before it reached me. I learned to be quiet, to make myself small, to avoid bringing shame or more blame onto myself. Family events were a special circle of hell. Christmas, Thanksgiving, even my own birthday. Each became a parade of subtle slights. Amanda always found a way to elevate Ethan, seating him prominently at the dinner table, declaring his latest minor achievement. He made the soccer team, to applause. When it came to me, she offered faint, insincere praise. Grace, well, she's still working on her piano pieces, aren't you, dear? Mixed in with the clatter of silverware. I heard the laughter of relatives who'd never ask why I ate so quietly, or why my father's smiles never quite reached his eyes. The physical distance in the mansion became emotional distance. My room was at the far end of the second floor, away from Amanda's ever-watchful eyes. And yet, the sense of being watched never left me. She had a way of knowing when I'd sneak out to the library with a book or try to call the one friend who didn't seem fazed by my weird, careful ways. Sometimes I'd overhear Amanda speaking to her friends, on the phone, painting me as a moody, difficult teen. She's just not as bright as Ethan, bless her heart. But we do our best with her. In those years, I started internalizing her words. I questioned myself at every turn. Was I really as clumsy, as selfish, as undeserving as she made me out to be? Was I ungrateful for wanting my mother's old things back, rather than Amanda's modern tastes? Was my silence at dinner the sign of bad manners? Or just self-preservation from the barbs that flew across the table? Sometimes the isolation was literal. If Amanda was displeased, which happened often for reasons as trivial as a wrinkled skirt or a book left on the stairs, she'd ground me with no warning. No electronics, no phone, no friends allowed over. At those times, I'd lie on my bed, tracing cracks in the ceiling, imagining what life might have looked like in a different house, with a different set of parents. The mansion's walls seemed to press
I'll
in
take
on
one of
me,
the chocolate croissants,
heavy
please.
with expectation and
All right,
disappointment.
and a cappuccino
My
for
father
me.
rarely intervened. Maybe he was afraid of provoking Amanda's temper, or maybe he simply believed her version of events. Either way, the effect was the same. I was left to fend for myself, unsure of what family even meant. Holidays became battlegrounds
Did
for
you
something
hear what
larger
happened down at the
than
corner
myself.
house?
One Christmas,
I heard
Amanda
the
gave
police were
Ethan
there
and me
again last
matching
night.
sweaters. His was perfectly his size, in his favorite color. Mine was two sizes too small, and blinding pink. She knew I hated pink. When I failed to feign delight, Amanda's face tightened into a brittle smile, and her father's gaze dropped to his lap. That night, I hid the sweater at the back of my closet, feeling shame that I couldn't even manage gratitude for a gift that so clearly wasn't meant for me. The worst part was how subtle everything was. There was no outright abuse, nothing tangible to point to if someone on the outside ever asked, "Are you okay?" Amanda's cruelty was measured in slights, in comparisons, in the slow erosion of self-worth. It was the kind of pain that lingered long after the words themselves faded. By the time I hit my mid-teens, I'd become an expert at avoidance. I immersed myself in books, in music, in anything that let me slip away from the present moment. The stray cat, older now, a bit grayer, remained a quiet companion. Sometimes I'd curl up beside her on the porch, scratching her behind the ears, and whisper all the things I'd never say to Amanda or my father. The weight of unspoken words grew, a nest of secrets in a house that prized perfection above all else. Looking back, those years shaped me in ways I couldn't see at the time. They taught me how to survive in silence, how to find comfort in the smallest thing, a good book, a rare smile from an old friend, the memory of my mom's gentle hands on my hair. They also lit a spark inside me, a resolve that one day, someday, I would break free from blame and claim a space of my own. The decision to stand up.
Please
The
don't do
year
that.
I turned 19, something inside me reached a breaking point. Up to that moment, all those quiet years of surviving blame and loneliness had built into a kind of fever under my skin. Restless, persistent, impossible to ignore. I remember looking in the grand bathroom's gilded mirror that spring, feeling like I was staring at a ghost version of
Look at her,
myself.
she knows something.
Eyes dark with exhaustion, shoulders tense
Take a look at this.
with the weight I'd
We
been
believe
carrying
it
for so
belongs
long.
to you.
There were lines etched into my face that never belonged to a teenager, or at least, not the kind of teenager I imagined I would be if I'd grown up
Come
somewhere
on, where
else.
are you?
With
I know
someone
it's
else.
the right one.
The truth
Please
is,
be here.
by then, I was tired of my own silence. I was
Wait, look
tired
here,
of
this
waiting
entry
for
on
my
April
father
12th.
to notice me. Tired of playing invisible
That's
for
the
Amanda's
exact
benefit.
amount that went missing from the
Tired
pension
of
fund.
pretending that my pain was as insignificant as she always wanted it to be. Something had to change. It started, oddly enough, with a box of my mother's old letters, unearthed by accident when I was cleaning out the attic one rainy day during spring break. The attic was forbidden territory as far as Amanda was concerned. But that day, she and Dad were away on business in Chicago, and curiosity outweighed my fear of her inevitable wrath. The letters were bundled tightly, with silk ribbon discolored by age. Most of them addressed to my father, from my mother when they were newlyweds. Curled up against rafters, thick with Texas dust, I read words I'd never heard my mom say. She wrote about her dreams, her love for me, her worries for our family's future. Some letters were softer, full of hope, but some held undertones of anxiety, remarks about documents she wanted kept safe, or hints of oddities in her inheritance accounts. One, in particular, was accompanied by a faded legal notebook, half filled with financial notes and references to a family trust I'd never even heard of. Suspicion grew like ivy. Why had no one ever told me about this trust? Why were there years of notes tracking account numbers, transfers, and lawyers' names I didn't recognize? There were references to assets left under my name, but after Mom's death, all of it had simply vanished. I spent the next several weeks tracking down every thread
The
from
merger
those
cannot
notes.
proceed under these
It was the
terms.
hardest private investigation of my life.
He
Every
assured
time
me
I
the
thought
documents
I'd
were
reached a dead
finalized.
end, something else popped up. School became background noise. I lived for the secret hours after class, when I could sneak into my father's office, rifle through old files, or sneak email exchanges from Amanda's unsecured laptop. I started writing down everything I found, keeping meticulous records in a notebook stashed under a floorboard in my room. I hit a wall when it came to any documents that mentioned the Anderson Foundation, a charity I'd vaguely known existed, but to which Amanda had devoted years of her life. According to the public accounts, the foundation
We've been over this
funneled
100
money
times. We're still
into
missing the link to the
education
getaway car.
projects,
Wait, the
youth
florist shop.
arts,
He didn't
and
buy
women's
flowers. He was
shelters.
watching the alley.
But the
Changes
numbers
everything.
didn't add up. Several bank statements, procured thanks to a helpful friend who interned at Dad's law firm, hinted at substantial withdrawals and complex shell accounts. I didn't want to believe what my gut was telling me, but all the evidence pointed to the same conclusion. My mother's inheritance, the one she wanted for me, was siphoned off after her death. Some of it sat in Amanda's personal accounts. Some of it covered up debts my father had racked up in the
You know
years
exactly
following.
where he is. You
Every
helped him
time
escape,
Amanda
didn't
threw
you?
a garden
I don't
party
know what you're talking
or
about. Leave
boasted
me
about
alone.
her renovations, it was paid for with money that should have secured my future. The realization was blinding. Rage, heartbreak, and finally, a cold, determined focus. I would not let my mother's legacy disappear in service of Amanda's fantasy life.
And that's
That
when he
decision,
grabbed her.
that I was done being complicit in
I
my
couldn't
own
do
erasure,
anything. I
lit a
just
fuse
watched.
that could not be put out. Of course, I knew I couldn't just storm into the dining room during brunch and demand answers. Amanda would laugh me out of the house, and Dad would hide behind his Wall Street Journal. I needed to be methodical, So, I did what I'd always done when the world felt out of control. I researched. I gathered documents, flagged questionable transactions, highlighted suspicious dates, and started slipping questions to people who might have answers. A retired accountant who'd worked for us for a decade. One of my mom's oldest friends, who still kept her annual Christmas cards. The attorney whose number lingered at the back of my mother's address book. My allies grew, quietly and steadily. It was terrifying, trusting people after a lifetime of being burned. But every piece of corroboration strengthened my resolve. I remember the night I called the family lawyer, a graying, soft-spoken man named Mr. Duncan. My hands shook as I dialed. My voice nearly failed when I asked if I could meet him in person.
It's complex.
When we finally sat down in his cluttered office 2 days later, I slid copies of everything I'd collected across his old wooden desk. He didn't try to placate me or wave away my concerns. Instead, he laid out the process for launching a formal review and advised me to keep everything strictly confidential until we knew more. He promised to dig into the trust's management, the transfers, and Amanda's connection to the foundation. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. Already, having spoken my truth, I could feel the first light of possibility. For months, I lived a double life. Dutiful daughter by day, relentless detective by night. Amanda, the master of intuition, must have sensed I was changing. She grew colder, randomly invasive, questioning why I wasn't eating, why my grades had dipped, if I was sick. But now, her opinion no longer defined me. I felt bolstered by the secrets I was dragging into the light, every one another brick to build the case for my freedom. The most difficult part wasn't pretending as usual. It was the waiting. Legal wheels turned slowly, and every day I spent under Amanda and Dad's roof felt riskier. Some nights I imagined being discovered. My notebook seized, evidence destroyed, the whole house closing in around me. But I didn't let fear stop me. I painted on my smile, played my role, and held tightly to the knowledge that a reckoning was coming. I kept Mom's last letter tucked in my purse, her love grounding me when things felt impossible. The decision to fight was both an act of rebellion and of healing. I was standing up, not just for myself, but for the memory of the woman who'd wanted me to claim my place in the world. No matter the cost, I promised myself I would see it through. The revelation, unveiling the truth. There are moments in life when time seems to stand still, when the spinning world halts, and you know, deep down,
I need a photograph of
that
this
what happens
angle
next
immediately.
will change
get
everything
me
you
an
thought
evidence
you knew
bag.
about yourself and your place in the universe. For me, that moment arrived on an unexpectedly crisp Saturday in late April. 3 years after I'd first dared to question the legacy left for me by my mother and the labyrinth of secrets swirling inside the
I want
Anderson
this floor
mansion.
meticulously
Let
checked
me
for
set the
prints.
scene. The Anderson family
Bag that
had never
phone,
been
it hasn't
short
stopped
on dramatic gatherings.
What can you tell us about
But
the
this
file?
one felt different from the start.
Are there any new
We
developments
were
in the
hosting
case?
our annual spring
When will
luncheon,
the indictment come
a
down?
tradition dating back to my grandmother's era. A day of lace tablecloths, perfect floral arrangements, and enough staged laughter to rival any reality TV special. As usual, the house buzzed with the kind of nervous energy you only feel when people have something to hide. Amanda flitted about, correcting the staff over the tiniest slip. Her smile stretched a bit too wide. My father, older and more faded than I remembered, shook hands and offered hollow pleasantries, his eyes always fixed somewhere just over my shoulder. For weeks leading up to that lunch, I'd worked with the family lawyer, Mr. Duncan, and my small circle of allies to prepare. Every document was in order. Copies of bank statements, letters, emails, legal records. and a timeline so meticulously constructed it could have rivaled Amanda's most elaborate centerpiece. I wore my mother's locket that day,
over and over.
a small promise
I didn't
to
see a
myself
weapon, just his
that no
fists.
matter what,
You're sure you've
I
never seen
wouldn't
him
let her
before?
memory
Never.
be reduced to a footnote in Anderson family history. The first course had barely been cleared away before Amanda, always the master of theatrics, tapped her glass to command attention. She welcomed everyone, spoke of our family's success, and made a thinly veiled reference to how much sacrifice and unity it took to keep our legacy
Look at this
thriving.
name right here.
I listened
He's
to
connected
her
to the
words in a
financials.
haze,
But he has an alibi for
my
the night
heart
of the
pounding
3rd.
so loudly
A weak
that I
one, though.
wondered if anyone could hear it echo against the sterling silverware. When the time felt right, when all the eyes in the room were fixed on her, and the weight of years of hidden truths pressed on my chest, I stood up. My hands trembled, but my voice did not betray me. I have something important to share, I said, cutting through the murmurs
Taxi!
and
Wait!
forced smiles.
Stop!
For a split
Over here,
second,
quick!
the room went so quiet I could hear the clock ticking above the mantel.
It's okay.
Amanda's
Just
expression
tell me what you
froze.
saw.
Her
I know who
hand
did it.
caught midair over her
He was
wine
wearing a
glass.
dark coat.
My father looked at me as if seeing a stranger break through the wallpaper. I laid out the story in careful, deliberate words. How after Mom's death, substantial amounts of money from her personal accounts and the family trust had been rerouted and hidden behind a maze of shell companies. I spoke about Amanda's misuse of foundation funds, her personal enrichment disguised as charity, and my father's silent complicity. Each allegation was backed up with evidence, which I handed out, page by page, to every relative and board member present. I even pulled out copies of correspondence between Amanda and third parties, detailing illicit deals and quiet payoffs that explained why certain family projects had mysteriously failed or vanished into thin air. The shock descended
This graffiti
slowly,
holds the
like
key.
a cold wave, lapping
Is it the
around
victim's
ankles
last message?
before it floods
Or the
entire
suspect
room.
taunting us?
Amanda tried to cut me off.
I've reviewed the documents,
voice
and I can assure
rising
you
in
there's been a
false outrage.
misunderstanding.
But the impact
acted
of years
strictly
of
within the
cold
bounds of the
smiles
agreement.
and covert cruelty had finally caught up to her. Uncles who once looked through me
This is the man
like
I'm
glass
looking for. Have
now
you seen
frowned
him?
at her. Aunts avoiding Amanda's eyes, as if the truth would leap from my papers to their own manicured fingertips. My father, for his part, seemed to shrink into himself with every truth revealed. People asked questions, hard questions. They wanted dates, details, explanations for timelines that never added up, and accounts that didn't square. I answered every one. Sometimes forced to recall things I wish
underneath
I could
the scapula.
forget. The day
It
I
appears
found
they
my
used a
mother's
serrated
letters,
blade.
the first time Amanda belittled me
My
in
God.
front of guests, the way my father had disappeared into his study when things got uncomfortable. I spoke not to incriminate, but to illuminate, to make the invisible threads of injustice finally visible to everyone gathered under that ornate, suffocating roof. The meeting became a courtroom, each voice an echo of the accusations Amanda had hurled at me since I was a child. Except now, the evidence was undeniable, and the tables had well and truly turned. Amanda's charm began to unravel at the seams. She denied, then deflected, then finally
You
demanded her
deliberately
lawyer
circumvented
be
my
called
authority.
at once.
Your reckless
Some
behavior
relatives
has
looked
jeopardized
pained,
this entire
perhaps
investigation,
recognizing
and I
pieces
won't
of
tolerate
themselves
it.
in the ways they, too, had let family secrets slide by for the sake of decorum and peace. For hours, the Anderson legacy was dissected, not by external enemies or gossip, but by one of their own. I watched as truths landed like stones in a pond, rippling outward, impossible to reel back once revealed. The board of the family foundation called for an emergency review. Investments were frozen, private investigators were tentatively engaged, and the family matriarch, my great-aunt Beatrice, summoned the courage to demand an independent audit.
Stop!
For the first time in my life, I was not invisible. I was not the problem. I was the whistleblower, the survivor, the one who refused to let the past be rewritten to suit Amanda's narrative.
You have to help me
anymore.
with this.
What followed
I
was
know you know
weeks of
something.
upheaval.
Please, just give me a
Amanda
name.
was asked
You know
to
I
leave
can't
the
do that.
mansion
It's better if you
pending
just let this
further
go.
investigation.
It's him.
My father,
Number 3.
caught between pride and shame, attempted to reach out, but
Are
I
you
was no
absolutely
longer
certain?
shrinking from his gaze. Our relationship would never be what it should have been, but at least the truth was out in the open. Lawyers descended on the house with the efficiency of locusts, pouring through records and interviewing staff who had witnessed Amanda's manipulations firsthand. Some shied away, but a few found the courage to speak, confirming what I had suspected all along. The Anderson Foundation restructured, with Amanda's name scrubbed from records and a new board installed. There were moments that summer when I felt overwhelmed by the consequences of my decision. Relatives who once ignored me suddenly wanted to talk, not always out of compassion, but out of fear
Wait.
for their own inheritances
I've got
or
something.
reputations. Some
think
tried
this is it.
to discredit my findings, whispering that I was vengeful, unstable, or simply misunderstood. But the weight of evidence, the sheer mountain I'd constructed
Get
from
out
years
now!
of careful
Sell it
research
all! We're
and
losing
quiet heartbreak,
everything! I said
was
sell
impossible
it!
to dismiss. The press inevitably got wind of the scandal. I braced myself for the headlines, for neighbors peeking over hedges and classmates sending awkward messages I'd never receive in person. Yet, beneath the swirl of chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had done right by my mother, by myself, and, however unintentionally, by the future of a family-long content to sweep things under the Persian rugs. During those first shaky weeks, I would walk the mansion's shadowed halls late at night, locket in hand, and repeat silent promises to the little girl I once was. You are not invisible. Your pain matters. Your voice has power. In the months that followed, as audits confirmed what I had revealed, or exposed further wrongdoing still, I watched friendships shift, alliances crumble, and the balance of power in the Anderson family tilt away from those who had wielded it so callously. The process of restoring what had been lost was messy and incomplete. No amount of money or legal settlement
Victim,
could
suspect,
return my childhood,
or investigator,
mend
based on
my
the case
relationship with my father, or erase the acid drip of Amanda's words from my mind. But I was in control. I fought for every dollar returned to the trust established by my mother. Every name cleared, every false narrative debunked. The mansion itself, that symbol of both privilege and pain, no longer held the same power over me. In fact, I moved out that autumn,
I adore the contrast
choosing
of the
a
colors in the
modest
central piece.
apartment in the city,
It certainly commands
one
attention.
suffused with
The
late
lighting is
afternoon
superb.
sun and the music of my own choosing. Through therapy, new friendships, and a growing sense that my story might help others, I began piecing myself back together. Old ghosts occasionally lingered, but each time I relived the showdown of that April afternoon, the looks exchanged, the truth uncovered, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen a little more. Reclaiming my place in the Anderson family and protecting my mother's legacy came at a price. Yet, as the investigation drew to a close and the falsified accounts were finally set right, I felt lighter than I had in years. I stood taller, spoke clearer, and understood that justice is rarely swift or simple, but worth fighting for all the same. The day Amanda signed her final documents and left Texas for good, the mansion felt recognizable, almost gentle in its stillness. My father handed over the keys to my mother's old study, a symbolic, if overdue, gesture. Standing in that sunlit room, surrounded by my mother's old books and faded photographs, I let myself imagine a future shaped not by secrets and sorrow,
He's in the accessories
but by
department.
truth,
Moving
and
fast.
by a voice
Keep
determined
pace.
never to be silenced again. restoring my name and power. If you'd asked me during those gray Houston winters, when I was a ghost in my own home, what justice might look like,
Here's the
I'd have
package.
imagined something
Good.
dramatic.
Let's hope this is the last
Thunder
time
in
we
the
meet
sky,
here.
courtroom confessions, headlines with my face. But I never realized how slow justice would feel in practice, how it would meander through endless paperwork, phone calls in hushed tones, endless cups of coffee gone cold on my hospital corners of my city apartment. Declaring the truth was one thing, but restoring what had been lost, my reputation, my inheritance, my power,
I
was
didn't
another
mean for it to
journey
happen.
entirely. Walking back
It was an
into the
accident.
Anderson mansion after Amanda's removal was both exhilarating and terrifying. I half expected the walls to shudder, or the chandeliers to swing in ghostly protest. The air was different, heavier, yet charged with possibility. My father was rarely home in the aftermath, preoccupied with attorneys and PR advisors, afraid perhaps of confronting me directly. I can't blame him for that. When you've let a secret fester for so long, sunlight is almost painful. There was so much to undo. The first
lie to me.
task
We have
was
the evidence
working
right here.
alongside Mr. Duncan,
Look at me when I'm talking to
our
you.
long-suffering family attorney, and the auditors now swarming with every financial record Amanda had ever touched. I was now a core stakeholder, and my mother's assets, clearly and legally mine, though long swept behind legal technicalities, and Amanda's paper maze, slowly trickled back into my control. I remember the surreal feeling of seeing my name listed as a majority shareholder in Anderson Holdings for the first time. There it was, in sharp black ink, proof that the years of gaslighting and silence had not erased my bloodline or my rights. Not that it was met with cheer. There were distant relatives grumbling about an outspoken child, and rumors among board members that my father must be losing his mind. Some tried to sway me,
It really is the
offering
perfect
to
afternoon.
help manage
Absolutely
the family
perfect.
trust,
It almost makes me
always
forget
ready
about
to
the
pat
body in
me
the
on the
cellar.
head
I mean,
and
the
steer
wine.
things back toward the comfortable old hierarchy.
Don't you
But
dare
after
walk away
everything,
from me when I'm talking
their
to you.
niceties felt thin as tissue.
Both of you just stop it right
I
now.
had earned my place at the table, literally, at the long, polished boardroom table where deals were hashed out. My voice now held weight, and I made damn sure to use it thoughtfully but fiercely. My first official act as a shareholder was to demand a full restructuring of the Anderson Foundation's board. Amanda's partisans, those who'd looked away, or
They're
worse,
on to me. I think they
actively
followed me
helped
here.
her cover her tracks,
Meet at the
were
drop point
quietly
now.
asked to step down. I replaced them with people committed to transparency and the original mission my mother had intended, supporting community causes,
Be careful
and for
with
the
it.
first time,
It holds the
offering true
secrets of the
financial
founding
literacy
families.
programs to girls from backgrounds like mine. Silent ones, overlooked, the daughters who never quite fit in. Taking up my mother's work was the only way I could make sense of her absence. The locket she left me dangled over stacks of legal binders in those first early months. Her notes and letters, those lifelines I'd discovered in the attic, stayed near whenever doubt crept in. Every board meeting, every phone call with a lawyer was another act of reclamation. Not
Right
just
there,
of
the
money,
Brooks residence.
but of narrative.
That's where he hid the
Anderson
weapon the
was no
entire
longer
time.
Amanda's domain,
It all makes
nor
sense
my
now.
father's fortress of denial. It was becoming mine, built out of survival and stubbornness, and a kind of wild hope. There were moments when I was
I can't do
tempted to
this
walk
anymore.
away,
It has to end
to
tonight.
sell my
Don't call me
shares,
again.
and wash my hands of the whole history. But something in me wouldn't let go. Every victory was small. Winning the right to review past grants, firing a crooked project manager, rebuilding the trust's portfolio from the ground up. I learned to savor those small wins. With every new project approved, every community scholarship funded, I felt the sour taste of doubt recede a bit. Reclaiming my public reputation was a different beast. When the story broke in the Houston Chronicle, splashed
What do you
over
mean
the
they know where
society
she is?
pages and accompanied by
unit over there
photographs
now.
of the mansion in autumnal gold. My phone lit up day and night.
Steady.
Old classmates
Got the exchange.
apologized for never knowing.
Get a clear
Distant
shot of the drive
cousins
now.
sought contact, their politeness tinged with calculation. For a while, every walk in the city felt shadowed by eyes. People craning to see whether the scandal girl had truly survived her own family's undoing. I won't lie and say it didn't sting. There were moments when their whispers felt as pointed as Amanda's old barbs. But one night, wandering the edge of Memorial Park, I realized I was still, after everything, standing. I was still defining myself, not letting old wounds dictate the arc of my story. Of course, there were setbacks. Amanda pushed back through legal channels as expected. Her lawyers argued over every cent, every clause. My father sometimes vacillated in his loyalty, torn between relief at being rid of Amanda and grief over his own failures. There was one sleepless month when court hearings seemed endless and new layers of financial manipulation kept surfacing. Realizing just how many people had been willing to help Amanda at my expense
I marked where he hid
was
the
a gut
documents.
punch.
The camera's
I felt
right here.
deep
You have to
in my
avoid
bones.
this spot.
Therapy helped, as cliche as that sounds. Talking through the years of erasure, the careful plotting that had kept me out of rooms and out of conversations, helped me frame my anger as fuel rather than poison. My therapist reminded me, again and again, that power reclaimed is always a messy thing. It doesn't emerge in one fell swoop. It's built, brick by shaky brick, as you learn to trust your judgment and let go of the narratives that have clung like ivy so long. I poured myself into the foundation work, into connecting with beneficiaries, honoring my mother's
That's
values
everything. Secure
in
the evidence
ways
and pack it up.
Amanda never could. At the launch of the Grace Initiative, an outreach program for girls recovering from family trauma, I remember speaking to a packed auditorium,
That's him.
my voice steady and bright.
Confirm the bag.
For the first
He's at the
time,
vehicle. Go.
The Anderson name stood for something honest and fierce. People began to associate my story, not with scandal, but with resilience and transformation. That shift was the beginning of true power. My daily life, filled with meetings, strategy calls, fundraising events that felt worlds away from the old, stiff Anderson gallows. Sometimes I caught my reflection in a passing window, confident, poised, a woman in control, and barely recognized the silent teenager from my memories. Each day, I chose honesty over secrecy, action over anxiety. My reputation, once so frail and dictated by others, was now mine to shape. And so was the legacy of the Anderson women.
Done.
Rebuilding
The microchip is
relationships with my father and
Confirm
stepbrother
transfer. Get
was
out
a
now.
longer journey, complicated by years of shame and distance. Over time, my father began attending therapy himself, trying, awkwardly, sincerely, to apologize for his absence and to make amends. It would never be perfect, but forgiveness is its own kind of power.
Everything you asked for
I
is
learned.
inside.
My
Good work.
stepbrother,
We appreciate the
grown
risk
and
you're
independent
taking.
now, sought me out one day for coffee, away from Amanda's gaze. He confessed that he always admired my courage, even when he played the golden child to survive.
The
That
judge
coffee
decided that we
was a
have to
small
move,
peace
honey.
treaty, a chance for both
It's
of us
final,
to acknowledge we'd
but we'll
lost
get through
years
this
to the
together.
same toxic system. Through it all, I drew boundaries. I let
evening,
go
Mark.
of
I've
relatives
been waiting for
who
you.
could not respect me. Cut ties with business partners loyal only to their old illusions. The mansion became,
Gotcha.
gradually, less of a haunted place and more a headquarters, a living archive of family history and the work to be done. When I opened
He
my
was
mother's
erratic.
old study
The phone
as a
calls, they
reading
were
room
always
for local
secretive, late
students,
at night.
I
I
felt,
didn't want to get involved,
perhaps for the
but
first
I saw him
time,
shredding documents
that
too.
I truly belonged inside those antique walls. Looking
the
back,
secondary location.
reclaiming my
The
reputation
earth
and
is
power
disturbed.
didn't
Looks like a
mean
fresh dig.
erasing suffering or winning against Amanda. It meant finally centering the truth. Power, I learned, is more than money, board votes, or a name on a plaque. It is the ability to tell your own story, to insist on your own worth, to build something better out of the ashes of old betrayals. I became, at last, not the victim of the Anderson legacy, but its architect. And every day, even on the hardest ones, I remind myself, I have survived, I have spoken, and I will never be invisible again. The journey to rewrite my life. If you had met me in the
police are
aftermath
moving in
of
on
the
Mark.
Anderson scandal,
You have to warn him. Tell
you
him to
might
run.
have thought the hardest work was over. Truths had come to light, the villains were unmasked, and I finally had control over the legacy that was meant for me. But those television moments, they're a mirage. In reality, after you set the record straight and reclaim your power, you're left alone in the stillness, surrounded by the fragments of a story that needs rebuilding. That's when you begin the journey of truly creating a life of your own. With no more scripts, no more ghosts
We often
whispering
underestimate
from
the
old
power
walls,
of our own narrative.
and no more hiding
But once I
behind
embraced
family
my
names.
story,
The first
that is when
morning
the
in my
real
new
work
apartment
began.
is carved into memory. I woke up tangled in sheets that still smelled of fresh linen, sun peeking through blinds instead of centuries-old velvet curtains, and the city's pulse just outside my window.
We
For the first time in years, there wasn't a schedule paper-clipped to my breakfast tray, or the sound of staff bustling down the hallway. There was only me,
It's all
the
gone.
hush of possibility,
All of
and a
it.
blank page.
It's really
I spent
over.
those first weeks in something like a daze, floating between exhilaration and fear. The mansion's shadows had followed me. Sure, my mother's locket resting against my collarbone, memories of cold dinners, and quieter laughter echoing in empty spaces. But freedom is a wild creature. At first, it's hard to trust. Like, if you let yourself really believe it, it might just dart away. So I started small. Grocery runs, where I'd pick out foods Amanda never allowed in her pristine kitchen. Rearranging secondhand furniture in ways that suited me, not anyone else's sense of perfection. I learned that joy could be as simple as making my own terrible coffee and reading books
How do you
in the
respond
middle
to the
of the
verdict,
night.
Miss Kim?
Therapy became a regular part of my life, not as a
Look over here, Miss
luxury
Kim, just
or a
one
performance,
statement.
for the benefit of worried relatives, but as a lifeline. I found a therapist specializing in family trauma and power imbalances, and week by week, we unwound the knots Amanda and my father had tied tight inside me. It wasn't glamorous. There were sobbing sessions, angry sessions, meetings where I doubted everything, my own memory, my worth, the choices I'd made. But little by little, something in me began to soften. My voice grew steadier. Shame loosened its grip. Instead of flinching at my own reflection, I started to see a survivor, a woman who owned her scars. With every step forward, loss walked with me. After you sever a toxic branch from your family tree, the air is fresher, but the canopy is thinner. I drifted from relatives who wouldn't or couldn't accept the truth. Invitations to family events arrived less frequently, sometimes not at all. And when they did, they often came with asterisks and warnings. Amanda may be there. Let's not talk about the past, Grace. It stung, each absence, but it was also a strange relief. For the first time, I no longer had to trade my voice for a seat at
Slide
the
it
table.
under the menu quickly
Of
now.
course, some relationships
They can't know I was
survived,
here.
Nobody
though
will.
none remained unchanged. My father and I met occasionally, always with brittle awkwardness at first. He was haunted by regret, sometimes apologetic, other times still in denial about how complicit he'd been. Those talks were hard. I wanted closure, or maybe an apology that would undo a decade of silence. But life isn't a legal drama. Apologies don't heal all wounds, and sometimes you have to let go of what you'll never receive. Instead of demanding atonement, I learned to accept small gestures. Dad showing up at my first public speaking engagement, or sending a birthday card without Amanda's handwriting on the envelope. I rebuilt my connection with Ethan, my stepbrother, too. In the absence of Amanda's shadow, we were finally able to drop our old roles. The first time he visited my apartment, without fanfare, we ordered greasy takeout and played video games, laughing about how twisted our childhood competitions had been. Over time, honesty grew between us, a recognition that we were both shaped by the same toxic machinations, even if we'd survived them differently. Those sibling moments were a quiet triumph, small islands of normalcy in a sea of change. For a long while, I battled fear. Even as the dust settled, I worried that speaking out would become my entire identity, a permanent scarlet letter branding me as either the Anderson heiress or the one who blew up her own family. There were interviews, articles, and invitations to events, some seeking a story, others just hungry
You think
for
this
gossip.
is a game?
I drew
I didn't do
boundaries,
it. You hear me?
sometimes
I
fiercely,
didn't do it.
sometimes
We
clumsily.
have evidence that says
If being a
otherwise,
public
mister.
survivor meant anything, it was about telling my story on my own terms and refusing to shrink for anyone else's comfort. At the same time, I found unexpected joy in helping others. Through my foundation work, I connected with girls and young women stumbling through their own haunted homes, too afraid to speak, believing no one would ever believe them. I organized retreats, built support groups, and began offering scholarships, not just for academics, but for things like therapy, vocational training, and creative arts. The Grace Initiative slowly became a beacon for those who'd survived gaslighting and family secrets, a place where silent suffering transformed into collective strength. I suppose people think healing is about forgetting pain, but that's not how it works. Healing is about weaving a life that's bigger than your wounds. I started hiking, learned to ride a bike, finally, and painted lopsided portraits of my cat Falstaff on weekends. I hosted dinner parties for new friends.
Oh,
People
stop it. You're
drawn
making me
not by my
blush.
family name, but by my weird, fierce
We're just telling the
honesty.
truth. It looks delicious.
Occasionally, someone would say, "You're nothing like what I expected." It used to make me anxious. Now it makes me laugh. I'm no longer
here.
defined by other people's expectations.
Confirming
I get to be
location.
an
Bag it
unfolding
carefully.
story. Some days, recovery felt like a tightrope walk. There were setbacks. Nights I'd wake from dreams of locked doors and silent dinners. Days when a tabloid headline would dredge up old shame. Or when the mansion's new owners asked if I'd show the local historical society around. But each time,
Alto,
I
policía.
chose to move forward
Detente ahora.
rather than back. Every choice, no matter how small, was a reclaimed piece of my life. I donated some of my mother's jewelry to a museum charity auction, visited the rose garden from my childhood, and left flowers in sunlight for the little girl I used to be. Most surprising of all were the quiet moments of gratitude that crept in, not for the suffering, but for the strength that suffering unearthed. I learned to celebrate what I'd survived, to honor my resilience, and to build
have
a
to
sense
stop
of
this right
meaning
now.
outside
I don't
money
care what he
or
said.
legacy. I started
mean they
writing
have 'em?
again, not just this memoir, but fiction and poetry, and the kind of stories that heal in the telling. I volunteered at a local shelter for at-risk youth, and the first time a girl asked me, "Will it ever get better?" I could truthfully answer, "Yes, not easier, just better." With each year, the past loosened its grip. When Amanda's appeals were finally dismissed and the headlines faded, I realized I was no longer bitter, just determined
On
to
the
do right
charge
by
of
the
murder
life
in the
I'd
first
reclaimed.
degree,
I
we, the
mentored younger
jury,
women
find
in
the
business,
defendant
partnered
guilty.
with organizations that demanded accountability in powerful families like mine, and never again let shame dictate what stories deserve to be told. My journey to rewrite my life didn't end with a triumphant speech or a key to the city. It unfolded in 1,000 small choices, sometimes mundane, sometimes defiant, choosing whom to trust, when to rest, how to love a family that would never quite be whole again. I adopted an old dog from the pound, Maggie, part
We
mastiff,
know you were there, Sarah.
part angel.
We have the footage.
Painted my bedroom
It's time to
canary
stop
yellow
lying and tell us what really
and let
happened.
my apartment become messy and sunlit
Look,
and
I know
noisy
you saw
with
something.
laughter.
Where did he go?
I grew comfortable in my
He
skin.
went that way.
My story
didn't see his
became less
face, I
about
swear.
Amanda or the Anderson legacy and more about what I could offer the world now that I was free. Looking back, I see that survival gave way to self-determination, and the shadows of the past faded with each brave step towards something new. If you're reading this, maybe you're looking for a promise that things will turn out okay. Let me
I am
offer
not
you
changing
this.
my testimony,
You
Mark.
may
They
never
deserve to
get
know
the
exactly what he
apology
did.
It doesn't
you
matter what they
deserve,
deserve. We
or
stick
the
to the plan, or
answers
the
you
judge will
crave,
bury us on procedure.
or all the pieces put neatly back together. But you can find peace. You can design new joy. You can honor the lonely child you were by becoming the fierce, compassionate adult you needed most. The world will always expect you to shrink to fit its old boxes, but you have the power, truly, you do, to write new definitions of home, of love, of success. The Anderson Mansion is just a building now, a chapter already closed,
It was
not the
me.
sum of my existence.
I was there
The
when she
life I've
died.
built outside its
I
gates is
panicked
messy
and I buried the
real,
necklace in the backyard.
full of mishaps and growth,
All right, synchronize the
forged
pull.
by a survivor's stubborn grace.
Nice and slow.
I would
Copy
not
that.
trade this hard-won
Heavy
freedom,
resistance on my end.
not for all the chiseled stone and golden chandeliers in Texas. There is light on the other side of any locked door. Sometimes you have to claw your way toward it, but I promise it's worth everything.